I cheated with a younger resident for months during on-call shifts and meetings in hotel rooms. But my husband found out. He planned a silent revenge. Today I'm destroyed and living off the scraps of what is left of my own life. My name is Guadalupe. I am 30 years old and I was born and raised in Tijuana, Mexico. On the outside, my life seemed perfect. I work as a head nurse in one of the most prestigious private hospitals in the city, and my husband, Leonardo, who is 35 years old, is a financial manager at the same hospital. Married for almost 7 years, everyone saw us as the ideal couple. A spacious house with an ocean view, 2 comfortable cars, and a quiet routine. But inside I was restless. I was always driven by new things, challenges, and that adrenaline that family routine no longer gave me. I met Leonardo when we were still students. He was always stable, centered, one of those men who follow the straight path without straying. I admired him, it is true, but as the years passed I began to feel suffocated. Do you know that life of good morning, work, dinner, Netflix, and then to bed? Well, yes, I felt dead inside, and when something new and exciting came along I could not resist. I knew it was wrong, that I was risking everything, but I was weak. I needed to feel alive. It was at a medical conference in Guadalajara where I met Esteban, a 27-year-old surgery resident recently transferred to Tijuana. He was handsome, funny, and had that typical arrogance of young doctors who think they are invincible. What started as innocent conversations in the hospital cafeteria intensified too quickly. He looked at me in a way Leonardo had not looked at me in years. For the first time in a long time I felt desired. The first time I was unfaithful to Leonardo, I was so nervous I almost threw up. I knew he would never forgive me if he found out. He had always been very proud and traditional, one of those who believe in marriage for life. The worst part was that he never gave me reasons to act like that. He had always been affectionate, attentive, and a good man. I was the one who was wrong. I crossed the line, but I could not stop. After the first time with Esteban, I felt alive again. It was not love, it was addiction. The meetings became frequent. Lunches that turned into afternoons in cheap motels in the northern zone. Shifts where I made up extra hours just to be with him. Today I am ashamed, but at that moment I felt in control, as if I were living 2 lives without consequences. I never imagined Leonardo would suspect anything. He trusted me blindly. When he asked me if I wanted to have children, I avoided the topic because I knew I was keeping a dirty secret. Everything started to fall apart one April morning when Leonardo decided to return early from a business trip to Monterrey. I did not know, and I was in a hotel room with Esteban when he called me. I answered pretending to be sleepy, blatantly lying that I was at home on vacation. It was then that I made my first big mistake. I pretended to have dinner with colleagues and have the day off. But Leonardo was always smarter than he seemed, and at that moment my mask began to crack. That morning, as I hastily prepared to leave the hotel, I had no idea that Leonardo was already in the city. I left with Esteban, laughing, without realizing that someone was watching us. In the parking lot, we gave each other a quick kiss and headed to the cafe we always frequented after our getaways. But what I did not know is that my husband had tracked my location on his cell phone. He was watching me, and I, blinded by vanity and confidence, did not even realize it. Leonardo has always been discreet. He is not explosive or overly jealous. That is why I never thought he was the type of man who would investigate my life. I believed that what the eyes do not see, the heart does not feel. I was wrong. While I was laughing with Esteban, my husband was just a few meters away, watching his world crumble before his eyes. I did not know that at that moment he was taking photos and recording videos that would change my life forever. When I got home that night, Leonardo showed no suspicion. He kissed me, asked me how my dinner with the girls was, and even made me my favorite dessert. I felt bad inside, I swear, but in my head what I was doing did not matter, because it did not involve feelings, it was just something fleeting. But Leonardo, whom I always thought was emotionally distant, was actually suffering in silence while planning his own revenge. 2 days later I noticed changes in his behavior. He was more distant, colder. He did not hug me before leaving for work. He did not invite me to watch series together, and even at family dinners he seemed distant. I started to think he was tired of his marriage, that maybe he also had someone else. Ironic, right? I was unfaithful to him, and I still felt like a victim. But he was a master at hiding his feelings, and I could no longer decipher him. Things got worse when he started traveling more frequently to Mexico City and Guadalajara. I felt free, almost untouchable. With the field clear, my getaways with Esteban intensified. I ended up spending entire weekends away from home, inventing conferences, shifts, and even trips to my mother's house. I became a compulsive liar, but every time I returned, that persistent guilt gnawed at me. With every smile from Leonardo, I felt dirtier. What I did not know was that while I was drowning in my delirium, Leonardo was gathering evidence, talking to lawyers, and drawing up a meticulous plan. He not only wanted to divorce me, he wanted me to feel the same pain I had caused him, and he would be patient, cold, and cruel enough to make sure of it. Back then, I still believed I had everything under control. Today, I see how blind and stupid I was. My house of cards was about to collapse. The definitive turning point came on a Thursday morning. Leonardo, who rarely wrote to me during work hours, called to tell me he had lost a pen I had given him and wanted to know if it was in the drawer of our room. I was in the hotel bed with Esteban, and I made up an excuse. I would tell him I would check later. I thought it was just an inconsequential chat. I did not know he was testing me, provoking me to confirm his suspicions. I never imagined that at that moment he was driving to a hotel near the airport where Esteban and I had stayed. Leonardo was discreet, calm, calculating. When he called me, it was not because he missed me, it was because he already knew. After that, I became a caged animal, trapped in my own trap. That call was just the trigger for him to follow my steps to the end. And I, blinded by the adrenaline of betrayal, did not notice the trap closing. When he saw Esteban and me holding hands leaving the hotel, I had no idea I was being photographed. He, the man I thought was predictable, already had everything planned. He recorded videos, recorded and followed my every move like a hunter with his prey. I do not know what went through his head at that moment, but I know he did not explode. He took a deep breath and saved his anger for the right moment. Today, looking back, I realize I underestimated the intelligence and coldness of the man I married. That night, Leonardo acted normally. We had dinner together, laughed, and even made plans for the weekend. I felt torn between guilt and excitement for my secret adventure, but something in him had already changed. He looked at me differently. There was a shadow in his eyes that I could not decipher. He no longer touched me with the same warmth. I began to feel rejected, and at the same time I feared I was losing control of the situation. At work, gossip began to circulate. Some colleagues would whisper as I passed. Maybe it was just my paranoia, but I noticed the change in expression on their faces. Esteban had also changed. He began to treat me with less interest, as if I were just a meaningless affair. I had risked everything for him, and he did not even seem to care. I began to realize I was alone. My lover did not value me, and my husband was distancing himself. Leonardo, however, did not say a word. He let me fall alone. I could see the disappointment and contempt in his eyes, but I did not have the courage to ask him anything. I tried to be affectionate a couple of times, but he would pull away. I started to panic. I sensed that something was coming, something I could not control. My biggest fear was no longer losing Leonardo, it was discovering how far he was willing to go to punish me. The following weeks were a silent hell. Leonardo remained distant, cold, but he never lost control. I felt like a rat in front of a snake. I knew something bad was going to happen, but I could not predict when. I started to lose weight. I slept poorly, my nerves were on edge. Esteban also seemed suspicious. Our meetings became more spaced out. He became less affectionate, more evasive. I wondered if he also knew something. At the hospital, rumors spread. Those who once treated me with respect began to avoid contact. I pretended everything was fine, but every distant laugh made me paranoid. At home, Leonardo acted as if I were a stranger. We barely spoke, he went out more, he made calls I could not hear, and he even started practicing sports that had never interested me. It was as if he was being reborn while I was dying inside. At some point I began to think the problem was only in my head, that maybe I was imagining it, that he knew nothing, and that I could still save my marriage. I even suggested we go on a trip and start over, but Leonardo just smiled and said, "Maybe soon." It seemed more like a sentence than a hope. I was trapped in a vicious circle of lies, guilt, and fear. Every day, I felt the rope tighten. The evidence Leonardo had against me was accumulating. One day, when I got home, I found the door to our room unlocked and I realized my messages had been read. But he said nothing. I knew he knew, and we both pretended not to know. I started drinking in secret to calm myself. I lied to my colleagues, to my mother, to myself. The feeling that everything was falling apart was unbearable. It was then that he hired a lawyer and a private investigator, but in my arrogance, I still did not know. While I was making useless plans with Esteban, Leonardo was preparing the final trap. He was as patient as a hunter and as cruel as I never imagined. He did not just want to leave me, he wanted to destroy me. And I was stupid enough not to see the signs. My biggest mistake was underestimating him. The spark that ignited the bomb was when he discovered I had contracted an STD and had probably infected him. That was the trigger for him to act once and for all. The betrayal was already unforgivable, but the risk to his health was the final blow. He did not explode, he did not scream, he did not attack me. On the contrary, he became even calmer, and it was precisely his silence that destroyed me. He had made a decision, and I would be crushed without mercy. What I did not know was that Leonardo had already spoken with lawyers and a private detective named Miguel, famous in Tijuana for solving infidelity cases with discretion and efficiency. They were not just gathering evidence for the divorce, they were preparing something bigger. Leonardo wanted to expose me. He wanted me to feel the shame he felt seeing me in another man's arms. And he had the time, the resources, and the coldness to do it in the cruelest way. One day, while I was at the hospital, Leonardo went to the hotel where I used to meet Esteban. He managed to access the room with the manager's help and installed hidden cameras. The images he captured were devastating. Me, laughing with Esteban, kissing, giving myself to him without shame. The evidence was there, recorded in high definition. I never imagined he was capable of something like that. To me, Leonardo was predictable, emotionally weak. Once again, I was wrong. From that moment on, he changed even more. Absolute silence reigned at home. He looked at me with cold contempt, and his every gesture was calculated. I felt the coldness between us, but I kept denying it to myself. I started to avoid Esteban. Something told me our story was coming to an end, and worse, I no longer trusted him. Esteban started acting strangely, as if he was also afraid of something. It was as if I was about to lose both things at once, my husband and my lover. At the same time, Leonardo filed for divorce, but it was not enough. He wanted the news to spread, for everyone at the hospital to know about my betrayal. He started with looks, then with veiled comments. A week later, I was the center of gossip. My name was whispered in the hallways, and I, who had always been respected, became a laughingstock. Every step I took, I felt that everyone knew. And the worst part, I had no way to prove anything against him. I was the one who was wrong. The situation reached its limit when I received a court order at work. In the middle of my colleagues, doctors, and nurses, I was formally notified of the divorce and the accusation of infidelity. Everyone saw it, everyone commented. I wanted to disappear from the map. My colleagues looked at me with pity, others with contempt. Esteban, the coward, did not even have the courage to look at me. He disappeared, leaving me alone. Leonardo had won. I had finally fallen into the trap. When I returned home desolate, I found Leonardo sitting on the sofa, calm, with a glass of wine in his hand. He looked me in the eyes and said with a cold voice I had never heard before, "I hope it was worth it, Guadalupe, because it is over and you will remember this day for the rest of your life." I collapsed on the floor, begging for a chance, but he simply got up and went upstairs without looking back. The war had begun and I had already lost. From that day on, my life became an endless nightmare. At the hospital, people murmured behind my back. Some even stopped greeting me. The news of my betrayal spread like wildfire. Every hallway seemed narrower, every look more critical. Even my patients seemed to look at me differently, as if they knew I was not the respectable woman I appeared to be. I was ashamed to even enter the cafeteria. Leonardo did not raise his voice or humiliate me personally. There was no need. The city itself seemed to conspire to destroy me. Indirect messages that were clearly aimed at me started appearing on social media. Respect your partner before they learn to live without you, or be careful who you hurt. One day it could be you who ends up on the floor. These were phrases that appeared on my colleagues' profiles. I cried alone in the hospital bathroom, unable to deal with the shame. I tried to talk to Leonardo. I begged him to resolve things privately to avoid more exposure, but he just looked at me with that icy smile, as if I meant nothing to him. Now you know what it is like to be cheated on. Now you know how much it hurts, he said calmly. His words hurt me more than any scream. He did not want a simple divorce. He wanted my total destruction, and he was getting it. Esteban, the coward, disappeared completely from my life. He stopped answering messages and avoided any contact, as if it were all my fault. I found myself alone, without friends, without allies, without anyone. Even my own family began to distance themselves when the gossip reached them. My mother called me crying, disappointed. My cousins blocked me from social media. I had become an outcast, a walking shame. Leonardo, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving. He smiled more. He was more elegant, more confident. I saw him going out to dinners, to events, always surrounded by hospital colleagues who were once my friends. His world was spinning while mine was crumbling. I could not understand how he could be so fine while I could barely breathe. My heart ached. My mind was in pieces, but I still naively believed I could fix it. The worst was yet to come. Days later, I received the news that Leonardo had gathered enough evidence to ensure I would not be entitled to alimony or most of our assets. He used our prenuptial agreement that I had signed without reading it carefully years ago. I, who thought I had everything under control, felt crushed by my own stupidity and by the cold and ruthless plan of the man who once loved me. And I, foolishly, just cried and wondered how I could have lost everything like this. It was a gray Monday when Leonardo delivered the final blow. I was at the hospital when the nursing supervisor called me. With a look of shame, she informed me that some images of me had been sent anonymously to the board. They were videos of me with Esteban in the hotel in intimate situations. There was no way to deny it anymore. I had officially become the disgraced woman of the hospital. My boss called me and suggested I take a few days off. I understood the message. I was going to be let go for good. I left there in a state of shock, feeling the ground disappear from under my feet. Crying, I called Leonardo, but he did not answer. I sent messages, I called old friends, I even tried to talk to Esteban, but no one answered. For the first time in years, I tasted true abandonment. When I got home, Leonardo had already taken almost all his clothes and several personal items. He did not expect me to fight or argue, he was simply erasing the traces of our history. That same day, I received the formal notification of the legal process. He not only asked for a divorce, but he attached all the evidence, including the STD report he had sent me. He formally accused me of infidelity, emotional damage, and even moral negligence. When my parents found out, they turned their backs on me. I even lost the respect of my sister, who had always supported me. I was completely alone, sinking into a bottomless pit. Desperation began to consume me. Leonardo, on the other hand, seemed like a reborn man. He started dating a colleague from the hospital, a lawyer who had been recently hired months before. I saw it all from afar, through social media and gossip. While I was losing everything, he was flourishing. I wondered if he had ever truly loved me or if he was always waiting for the opportunity to destroy me. I no longer knew what was real. Now I was only left with regret and remorse. As the days went by, my mental health began to deteriorate. I had panic attacks, uncontrollable crying, and I lost 8 kilograms in less than a month. Every sunrise I felt less human, weaker, more empty. Leonardo did not respond to my attempts to contact him. He blocked me from all apps and cut off conversations with mutual friends. The humiliation of knowing that everyone knew about my failure as a wife gnawed at me. I no longer left the house until, in the height of desperation, I tried one last time to find him at work. I waited at the hospital door like a pitiful beggar. When he left, he did not even look me in the eye. He simply walked past me as if I were invisible. The pain I felt at that moment is indescribable. I had destroyed my life, my reputation, and I had lost the only man who truly cared about me. For the first time, I understood that forgiveness would not come and that maybe I did not even deserve it. After that day in front of the hospital, I realized that Leonardo had completely erased me from his life. It was as if I had never existed. No one called me, no one looked for me. Even former colleagues stopped responding to my messages. Social media, which used to be full of likes and happy photos, became a desert. I became a ghost in the city where everyone knew me, and every day, without contact, I sank deeper into sadness and shame. The days became endless. I was locked in the house, crying in the corners, not knowing what to do. My mother called me only once to tell me that I was a disappointment to the family and that she did not want to see me anymore. It was as if my heart had been torn from my chest. I was too ashamed to even go out to buy bread. The guilt weighed on me like a weight on my shoulders, and the only person I wanted to see, Leonardo, would never come back to me. The house was sold quickly. Leonardo did not want to fight for it. He let it be sold, and the money was divided as agreed. I thought that at least I would have something to start over with, but with the accumulated debts and unemployment, the money vanished in a few months. I was forced to rent a small apartment in a very different neighborhood than what I was used to. Far from the beach, far from the hospital, far from everything I had lost because of my own fault. The news from the hospital kept reaching my ears. Leonardo had been promoted. He was dating an elegant, beautiful, and successful woman. I, on the other hand, was having trouble getting job interviews. No hospital in Tijuana wanted to hire me after the scandal. Even those who had known me for years preferred to stay away so as not to tarnish their image. I became radioactive. It was as if I had a contagious disease. No one wanted to come near me. Over time, I began to have health problems, insomnia, depression, extreme anxiety. I started taking medication to try to sleep, but even that did not work. Every night, I dreamed of the day Leonardo saw me for the last time. I relived that moment over and over again. I tried therapy, but even the therapist seemed to judge me. It was as if the mark of betrayal was engraved on my skin, impossible to erase. Even Esteban, the man for whom I had lost everything, disappeared from town. I found out he had been transferred to another hospital in Guadalajara, probably to avoid the repercussions. He did not even try to help me. He used me, discarded me, and moved on. Meanwhile, I was left here, broken, alone, without family, without a husband, without a future. Life had cruelly turned its back on me, and I, the idiot who caused it all, could not even find the strength to forgive myself. I hit rock bottom when I had to sell the car to pay the apartment bills. I found myself traveling by bus with my face covered, afraid of running into someone from my past. Some days I went hungry because the little money I had left was for rent and medicine. The nights were even worse. I would lie down and stare at the ceiling, wondering how I had let everything slip through my fingers. The answer was always the same: selfishness and immaturity. They say that time heals all wounds, but they do not tell you that it can also destroy when you are alone. No apology I could give would erase what happened. Leonardo did not respond to any of the desperate messages I sent him, not even a cold, okay. He had truly erased me from his life. Our mutual friends also disappeared. Social media, where I used to show off a perfect life, was now just a cruel reminder of what I had lost. I even distanced myself from my own family. My parents did not want to see me. My sister never answered my calls again. I was completely alone. I even thought about taking my own life more than once. Getting up in the morning became a struggle. Eating was an effort. Looking at myself in the mirror was torture. I saw a broken, exhausted, unrecognizable woman. And the worst part, I had no one to blame but myself. There were months of total darkness. My phone did not ring, my door was not knocked on, my social media was forgotten. I tried to write a letter to Leonardo, but I received no reply. I found out he was already living with his new girlfriend and seemed happy. The pain of knowing he had started over while I was in ruins destroyed me. But even in the midst of that abyss, a part of me still dreamed of one day starting over, even if it was alone. The first sign of change came when a former coworker, one of the few who had not turned her back on me, recommended a small clinic in Rosarito. It was nothing compared to the elegant hospital where I had worked before, but it gave me back some dignity. I accepted immediately, although the salary was much lower. It was either that or sink forever. For the first time in months, I felt I could still save myself from myself. I started working discreetly, avoiding social media, avoiding talking about the past. In Rosarito, no one knew who I was. I was just Guadalupe, the new nurse. No one knew about the betrayals, the scandal, the humiliation. For the first time in a long time, I managed to get through a night without crying. It was not happiness, not by a long shot, but it was a small ray of hope. I knew I would never be who I was again, but maybe one day I could be someone better. I spent the following months rebuilding myself, but the truth is that some wounds never fully heal. Even with the new job, the new routine, and some small friendships at the clinic, I still felt empty. The nights were still lonely. Sundays were the worst, those long days when the silence seems to scream. I asked myself daily if I could ever forgive myself, and the answer, even today, remains uncertain. I had destroyed not only my marriage, but my own identity. Leonardo never spoke to me again. I never saw his face up close again. I heard rumors that he had remarried, that they had bought a new house, that he was happy. At first it consumed me. I felt envy, anger, sadness. But over time I began to accept that I had chosen this path myself. It had not been a coincidence or an injustice. I had cheated, I had lied, I had lost, and now I had to face the consequences for the rest of my life. I never had a serious relationship again. Anyone who approached me ended up leaving when, out of honesty, I told them my past. It was as if my story was written on my forehead. I tried to hide it by pretending to be someone else, but every time I lied, I felt the same shame as before. I decided then that it would be better to live alone, that this would be my punishment, to face my mistakes alone. In the new clinic, I dedicated myself more than ever. I treated each patient with the utmost care, perhaps in an unconscious attempt to compensate for the damage I had caused. I received praise and earned the respect of the staff, but deep down I knew it was all superficial. No matter how much I tried to get over it, the past always came back. A song, a perfume, a laugh, any detail was enough to remind me of what I had done to Leonardo, to myself, to everything I once valued. Little by little I began to accept that some losses are permanent, that there is no magic formula that can erase bad decisions. I wonder if Leonardo somewhere still thinks of me, if he remembers the good times we had before I destroyed everything. Maybe not. Maybe he buried that part of his life, as I try to do daily, but the truth is that scars remain, and I know that the biggest one for him and for me is myself. Today, when I look at the sea in Rosarito in my rare free moments, I think of the woman I was, the arrogant and reckless Guadalupe, thirsty for cheap thrills, who destroyed everything that was most precious to me. I killed that woman with my own hands. What is left of me is just a shadow, someone who lives in silence, working, breathing, but who stopped truly living a long time ago. This is my punishment, to remain here remembering every day what I did.